There's a moment that comes to everyone. A moment when you realize the person you've been trying to become has been blocking the person you already are. You wake up one morning, and the first thought that enters your mind is a list, things you need to change, ways you're not enough, the body that needs discipline, the mind that needs control, the heart that feels too much or not enough. You've been at war with yourself for so long, you've forgotten what peace feels like. This is the human condition we rarely speak about. We've turned self-improvement into self-rejection. We've confused growth with erasure. Somewhere along the way, we learned that to be worthy, we must first be broken. That to heal, we must first declare ourselves sick. You buy the books, you follow the routines. You repeat the affirmations in the mirror, trying to convince yourself of something you don't quite believe. 5 in the morning. Cold showers, gratitude journals, manifestation boards. You're doing everything right, except you're still not happy, still not whole. Still waiting for that magical day when you finally become the version of yourself you can accept. The spiritual teachers tell you to love yourself. The self-help gurus tell you to push harder. The therapists tell you to be kind to yourself. The motivational speakers tell you that you're limitless. And you're exhausted. Caught between the command to accept yourself and the command to change yourself. Between being and becoming. Between rest and striving. Here's what nobody tells you. The fixing itself has become the problem. Not because growth isn't real. Not because change isn't possible. But because you've been operating from a fundamental misunderstanding. You've been trying to repair something that was never broken. You've been searching for something you never lost. Think about it. When did you first learn you needed fixing? Was it the look in your parents' eyes when you weren't what they expected? Was it the teacher who made you feel small? The friend who pointed out your flaws? The relationship that ended because you weren't enough? Society's impossible standards projected onto every billboard, every screen, every carefully curated life you scroll past. At 2 in the morning when you can't sleep, you internalized a lie, and then you built your entire life around it. The lie says, when I finally fix this thing about myself, then I'll be worthy. Then I'll be lovable. Then my life will begin. So you chase. You strive. You push and pull and mold and shape. You wage war against your own nature. You treat your humanity like a problem to be solved rather than an experience to be lived. And in this constant state of self-renovation, something profound is lost. The present moment slips through your fingers like water. You can't enjoy what is because you're so focused on what should be. You can't rest in yourself because you've declared yourself a construction site, always under development, never complete, never home. The Sufis have a teaching, you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. But you can't feel that truth when you're busy trying to be a different drop, when you're comparing your water to everyone else's, when you're convinced your essence is insufficient. Here's the paradox that breaks everything open. The moment you stop trying to fix yourself is often the moment everything begins to shift. Not because you've given up, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've stopped approaching your own existence as a problem. You've stopped treating your being as something that needs permission to exist as it is. This isn't about complacency. This isn't about staying stuck or refusing to grow. This is about understanding that growth doesn't come from self-rejection. It comes from self-recognition, from seeing yourself clearly, completely, without the distortion of shame or the pressure of perfectionism. When you stop fixing, you start feeling. When you stop controlling, you start connecting. When you stop improving, you start inhabiting. And inhabiting yourself fully, that's where the real transformation lives. Because here's what actually happens when you're at war with yourself. You fracture. You split into the self that is and the self that should be. The observer and the observed. The judge and the judged. And this division, this internal civil war, it drains everything. Your energy, your joy, your presence, your peace. You become a stranger to yourself. You lose touch with your own intuition because you're too busy following someone else's blueprint. You can't hear your own wisdom because the voice of self-criticism is too loud. You can't trust your own path because you're convinced it should look like someone else's. And the cruelest part, the things you're trying to fix are often the things that make you human. Your sensitivity, your intensity, your depth, your quirks, your edges, the very things that make you, you. You've been taught to sand down your uniqueness in pursuit of some generic version of wholeness. You've been convinced that the goal is to be acceptable rather than authentic. But what if you've had it backwards this whole time? What if the day you stop fixing yourself isn't the day you give up? What if it's the day you finally show up? Not as the person you think you should be, not as the polished, perfected, approved version, but as the messy, beautiful, complex, contradictory, fully human being you actually are. What if that's not the end of your journey? What if that's the beginning? Let me tell you about a conversation that changed everything for me. I once heard a Zen teacher say, "You are already Buddha. You're just pretending you're not." And my first thought was, that's absurd. Because I knew I wasn't enlightened. I knew all my problems. I knew my darkness. I knew my limitations. But then he said something that cracked me open. The pretending is the only problem. Sit with that for a moment. What if the only thing standing between you and wholeness is the belief that you're not already whole? What if your incompleteness is not a fact, but a story? What if you've been so convinced you're broken that you've overlooked the unbreakable nature of your being? This is the great cosmic joke, the great spiritual irony. You are searching for something you already possess. You are trying to become something you already are. It's like a wave trying to find the ocean, like a ray of sunlight trying to reach the sun. The separation is imagined. The distance is an illusion. But illusions have power. When you believe you're incomplete, you act from that belief. You grasp. You cling. You compare, you compete. You consume. You chase achievement after achievement, relationship after relationship, experience after experience, always hoping that the next thing will finally make you feel whole. But nothing external can fill an internal void that doesn't actually exist. Alan Watts described it perfectly. We are the universe experiencing itself, not a broken piece of the universe, not a flawed fragment that needs to earn its place, but the whole thing, the entire mystery. Consciousness itself, wearing a human face for a little while. When you truly understand this, not intellectually, but in your bones, the frantic energy of self-improvement begins to dissolve. Because you realize you're not trying to build yourself into something. You're trying to remember what you've always been. Think about a seed. A seed doesn't try to become a tree. It doesn't read books on how to grow bark or attend seminars on proper root development. It doesn't compare itself to other seeds or feel inadequate because it hasn't sprouted yet. The seed simply responds to the right conditions: water, sunlight, time. And the tree that emerges is not an improvement on the seed. It's the revelation of what was always present in potential. You are the seed. You are also the tree. The growth is not about addition. It's about revelation, about removing the obstacles to your natural unfolding, about creating the conditions where your inherent nature can express itself. But we've been taught the opposite. We've been taught that we're raw material, that we're blank slates or damaged goods, that our value is determined by our productivity, our achievements, our ability to conform to external standards. We've been taught that love must be earned, that acceptance must be achieved, that peace comes only after we've perfected ourselves. This teaching is violence disguised as wisdom. Because here's the truth: you were whole before the world told you that you weren't. You were complete before you learned to see yourself through the eyes of judgment. As a child, before the conditioning took hold, you existed without the burden of self-improvement. You laughed without needing a reason. You played without needing productivity. You rested without needing permission. You were without needing to justify your existence. What happened to that child? They're still there, underneath the layers of learned inadequacy, underneath the armor of self-protection, underneath the masks you wear to be acceptable. That child, that original, unbroken, inherently worthy being is still the foundation of who you are. The spiritual journey is not about becoming someone new. It's about unbecoming everything you were taught to be that isn't actually you. It's about subtraction, not addition. It's about releasing, not acquiring. It's about remembering, not achieving. The mystics across every tradition have been saying this for thousands of years. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Tat tavam ase, thou art that. You are not the drop, you are the ocean. These aren't pretty metaphors. They're direct pointers to a reality you've overlooked in your rush to fix yourself. When you stop fixing, a space opens up. A space where you can finally observe yourself without judgment, where you can witness your thoughts without believing every one of them, where you can feel your emotions without being overtaken by them, where you can be present with your experience without needing it to be different. And in that space, something extraordinary happens. The things you've been fighting against begin to soften. The parts of yourself you've rejected begin to integrate. The shadows you've been running from begin to reveal their gifts. Not because you fixed them, but because you finally stopped treating them as problems. Your anxiety, it might be hypervigilance left over from when you weren't safe. Your anger, it might be the part of you that knows you deserve better. Your sadness, it might be the depth of your capacity to feel. Your fear, it might be your intuition trying to guide you. None of these things are flaws. They're information. They're communication from the deeper parts of yourself that have been silenced by your attempts at self-improvement. When you stop fixing yourself, you can finally hear what you've been trying to tell yourself all along. This is the core insight. You are not a project. You are not a problem. You are not a before picture waiting to become an after picture. You are a living, breathing, evolving expression of existence itself. And existence doesn't make mistakes. It doesn't create things that need to apologize for being. The flowers don't apologize for their colors. The rivers don't apologize for their direction. The mountains don't apologize for their height. You don't need to apologize for being exactly as you are right now. Imperfect. In process. Human. That's not the end of growth. That's the foundation from which real growth becomes possible. So, what does it actually mean to stop fixing yourself? How do you live from this understanding? Because this isn't just philosophy. This isn't just poetry. This is a radical shift in how you relate to your own existence. Let me be clear. Stopping the fixing doesn't mean stopping the growth. It doesn't mean you give up on your dreams, or accept harmful patterns, or refuse to learn and evolve. It means you change the energy behind your actions. You change the foundation from which you move. Instead of changing yourself because you're not enough, you explore yourself because you're curious. Instead of improving yourself because you're broken, you express yourself because you're alive. Instead of fixing yourself because you're unworthy, you honor yourself because you're human. Can you feel the difference? One comes from lack. The other comes from fullness. One is driven by fear. The other is drawn by love. One fragments you. The other integrates you. Here's a practice that changes everything. For the next week, every time you notice yourself in self-improvement mode, pause. Just pause. And ask yourself, am I doing this from self-rejection or self-respect? Am I trying to become acceptable or trying to express what's authentic? Notice the difference in your body. Self-rejection feels tight, heavy, like you're bracing against yourself. Self-respect feels open, expansive, lighter, like you're breathing into yourself. When you exercise from self-rejection, it's punishment. When you exercise from self-respect, it's celebration. When you eat well from self-rejection, it's control. When you eat well from self-respect, it's nourishment. When you meditate from self-rejection, it's another task on the endless self-improvement list. When you meditate from self-respect, it's coming home to yourself. Same actions. Completely different energy. Completely different results. Because here's what most people miss. The quality of your being matters more than the quantity of your doing. You can do all the right things from the wrong place and still feel empty. Or you can do very simple things from the right place and feel fulfilled. The right place is acceptance. Not the acceptance that resigns itself to staying stuck. The acceptance that says, I am enough to work with right now. I am worthy of care right now. I am allowed to exist as I am right now. From that foundation, everything changes. Think about how you treat someone you love. You don't love them conditionally, waiting for them to fix themselves before they deserve your kindness. You love them as they are. And within that love, they feel safe enough to grow. They feel seen enough to change. Not because they have to, but because they want to. Because love creates the conditions for natural unfolding. What if you treated yourself that way? What if you loved yourself the way you love the people you cherish most? Not with blind acceptance of harmful patterns, but with the kind of compassionate understanding that creates space for authentic transformation. Here's another practice. Start noticing the voice of the inner critic, not to fight it, not to fix it, just to observe it. Notice when it shows up. Notice what triggers it. Notice the specific words it uses. And then, gently ask it, what are you trying to protect me from? Because that critical voice, it's not your enemy. It's a protector that learned a long time ago that keeping you small keeps you safe. That criticizing you before others can get you ready for rejection. That holding you to impossible standards keeps you striving and therefore valuable. That voice is exhausted. It's been working overtime for years, and it needs you to tell it, thank you for trying to keep me safe. I've got it from here. When you stop fighting the critic and start understanding it, something shifts. It softens. It quiets. Not because you've defeated it, but because you've integrated it. You've brought it back into the wholeness of yourself. This is the work, not the work of fixing, but the work of integration, bringing all the scattered, rejected, hidden parts of yourself back home. The angry part, the scared part, the sad part, the weird part, the too much part, the not enough part. They're all welcome. They're all you. And here's what happens when you stop the constant self-renovation. You have energy again. The energy that was being used to wage war on yourself becomes available for actually living, for creating, for connecting, for experiencing, for being present with what is rather than obsessing over what should be. You start to notice things. The way light filters through leaves, the specific warmth of morning coffee, the exact sound of someone you love laughing, the feeling of your own breath moving through your body. These small, sacred moments that you've been too distracted to notice because you were too busy trying to become someone else. Presence becomes possible when you stop trying to fix yourself, because presence requires acceptance of what is, and you can't accept the present moment while simultaneously rejecting the person experiencing it. Let me offer you something simple today. Just for today, what if you approached yourself as someone worthy of kindness? Not because you've earned it, not because you've achieved enough, or improved enough, or proven enough, but simply because you exist, because you're here, because you're conscious, because you're human. What if you spoke to yourself the way you'd speak to a dear friend? What if you forgave yourself the way you'd forgive someone you love? What if you allowed yourself to rest the way you'd allow a tired child to rest, just for today? See what shifts. See what becomes possible when you stop fighting yourself and start being yourself. When you stop fixing yourself and start feeling yourself. When you stop trying to become and start allowing yourself to be. This isn't the end of your evolution. This is the beginning of your revolution. The revolution of self-acceptance. The revolution of presence. The revolution of being courageously, completely, unapologetically human. There's an ancient story from the Sufi tradition. A man spends his entire life searching for a precious treasure. He travels to distant lands. He studies with wise teachers. He sacrifices everything in pursuit of this jewel that will finally make him complete. On his deathbed, exhausted and empty-handed, he returns home, and there, buried beneath the doorstep of his own house, the place he left decades ago, he finds the treasure he's been seeking. You are that man. We all are. We leave ourselves in search of ourselves. We reject ourselves in hope of finding ourselves. We fix ourselves in order to become ourselves. And all along, what we're searching for has been buried beneath the doorstep of our own being. The day you stop fixing yourself is the day you come home. Not to a perfect version of yourself, not to a completed version of yourself, but to yourself. The one who's been here all along, waiting beneath the noise of self-improvement and the weight of self-judgment. The one who never needed fixing. The one who was always enough. This homecoming doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It's quiet. It's subtle. It's the gentle realization that you've been holding your breath for years and you can finally exhale. That you've been clenching for decades and you can finally soften. That you've been performing for a lifetime and you can finally rest. In this homecoming, you discover something profound. Peace isn't something you achieve. It's something you uncover. It was there all along, buried beneath the striving, buried beneath the fixing, buried beneath the endless pursuit of becoming someone worthy of peace. You were always worthy. You just forgot. And forgetting is not a sin. It's part of the human experience. We all forget. We all get lost. We all start believing the stories the world tells us about who we should be. The return is not about perfection. It's about remembering. It's about recognition. It's about coming back to the truth that was true before the forgetting. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop trying to fix yourself, you actually start to transform. Not from a place of lack, but from a place of overflow. Not from shame, but from love. The transformation that comes from self-acceptance is deeper and more sustainable than any change that comes from self-rejection. Because it's rooted in truth. It's rooted in wholeness. It's rooted in the recognition of your inherent worth. You change not because you have to, but because you're free to. You grow not because you're insufficient, but because you're alive. You evolve not to escape yourself, but to express yourself more fully. This is the growth that lasts. This is the change that heals. This is the transformation that liberates. What happens when you finally stop fixing yourself? You start living, actually living. Not the half life of someone always preparing for the real thing. Not the waiting room of self-improvement, but the full, messy, beautiful, broken, open, completely human experience of being alive. You laugh deeper. You cry fuller. You love harder. You rest sweeter. You speak truer. You move freer. Not because you've perfected yourself, but because you've accepted yourself. And acceptance is the soil in which everything authentic grows. The people around you will feel it. Because someone who stopped fighting themselves stops fighting others. Someone who's made peace with their own humanity extends that peace to everyone they meet. Someone who's come home to themselves makes everyone around them feel more at home in their own skin. This is not selfish. This is the most generous thing you can do. To stop demanding that you be perfect. To stop requiring that you be fixed before you're allowed to be loved. To show up as you are flawed, learning, growing, completely human, and trust that this is enough. More than enough. Everything. Let me tell you what I wish someone had told me years ago. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a mystery to be lived. You are not a broken thing waiting to be repaired. You are a whole thing learning to recognize its wholeness. You are not becoming. You are being, and your being is enough. It always was. It always will be. The day you stop fixing yourself, you don't stop caring. You don't stop growing. You don't stop learning or evolving or changing. You just stop approaching your own existence as a problem. You stop treating your humanity as something that needs permission to be. You stop waiting for the day when you're finally good enough to deserve your own kindness. That day is today. It always was today. There is no future moment when you'll finally be worthy. There is only this moment, this breath, this heartbeat. This beautifully imperfect, completely irreplaceable, absolutely enough now, so put down the tools of self-improvement. Not forever, just for a moment. Just long enough to feel what it's like to exist without the burden of constantly renovating yourself. Just long enough to remember what you knew before the world taught you that you needed fixing. You are not a construction site. You are a home, you always were, and the door has always been open. All you have to do is walk through it. All you have to do is come back to yourself. All you have to do is stop fixing and start feeling. Stop improving and start inhabiting. Stop becoming and start being. This is the invitation, not to give up on yourself, but to give yourself up, to surrender the version of you that you've been trying to create and meet the version of you that already exists. Imperfect, in process, incomplete, infinitely worthy. The day you stop fixing yourself, everything changes. Not because you finally become who you're supposed to be, but because you finally allowed yourself to be who you already are. And that changes everything. Breathe. You're already home.